In this exercise, I'm going to show you how to control the behavior of shadows on a mesh-by-mesh basis. I've saved my progress as ShadyStuffToys.psd, found inside the 16 ADV light folder. And the first thing I'm going to do is increase the drama of the lighting a little bit. You may recall that the main source of lighting inside the scene is the point light inside of the lamp. In fact, the only other light source that's turned on is the moonlight coming in through the windows. So I'm going to go ahead and double-click on the thumbnail for the hotel room layer to bring up the 3D panel, and I'll click on Scene to make it active, change the quality setting to interactive painting so that we can make a couple of changes here without affecting the ray tracing. Then I'll twirl close bedroom and the other meshes as well, just to give myself a little more room to work. Click on the light bulb light to make it active. Let's take the intensity value down to 1.5, and I'm going to decrease the softness of the shadows to 10% so we have some harsher shadows. Now you may notice there's this Create Shadows checkbox. If you turn it off, this specific light source will not cast any shadows. And let me show you what that looks like. I'll go ahead and click on Scene once again and switch the quality setting back to Ray Trace Draft. And notice this time around, the ray tracing goes quite a bit faster than it normally does because it doesn't have to draw the shadows at the bottom of the scene. So we don't have any shadows under the end table or the bed. We also have no shadow being cast by these giraffes. We do have the big shadow being cast by the moonlight, but that's it. That looks totally wrong, obviously, but I just want you to see it's an option. So I'll go ahead and click here in the 3D panel in order to cancel the rendering. And I'll switch to light bulb and I'll turn Create Shadows back on so that you can see the top of the scene renders pretty much at the same speed it did before because that's where the reflections are. But the bottom of the scene is going more slowly, and you can see that we have these very dark shadows indeed. All right, I'm going to click in order to interrupt the ray tracing and zoom in on the giraffes because I want you to see how you can also control shadows for individually selected meshes. So I'm going to click on Giraffe 1. And notice these two options right here, Catch Shadows and Cast Shadows. So I could turn off Cast Shadows for this specific giraffe, Giraffe 1 being the left-hand giraffe. And as a result, we'll see that even though the right-hand giraffe continues to cast a shadow, the left-hand giraffe does not, which is a fairly interesting thing. All right, I'll go ahead and press the Escape key in order to cancel that render. Let's click on Giraffe 2 this time. Look at the reflection of the giraffes over here in the wall. Notice that both of the reflections are quite dim. Well, if I turn off Catch Shadows, which means the shadows that are being cast onto an object, if I go ahead and turn off those Catch Shadows, then that makes for a much more luminescent giraffe, almost a glowing giraffe. Notice how very, very bright it is in the reflection. And it's also quite bright here on the bed as well. I'm going to go ahead and click in order to interrupt that ray tracing, switch back to Giraffe 1. I'm going to turn its cast shadows back on so we can see that even though Giraffe 1 over here on the left-hand side is indeed casting shadows, it has no ability to cast those shadows onto Giraffe 2 because Giraffe 2 refuses to catch any of the shadows. All right, another thing you can do is control the visibility of a mesh independently of its shadows. For example, I'll click to interrupt the rendering, make sure Giraffe 1 is still selected, and I'll turn on the invisible checkbox. Now, this one is quite weird indeed. You can see that we've hidden the giraffe, which is something I could do just by clicking on the eyeball in front of the mesh. But I have not hidden its shadows. The shadows, it's either casting or catching. So we can see this sort of shadow-only version of the left-hand giraffe, which is just plain strange. All right, I'm going to click in order to interrupt the ray tracing, and now I'm going to turn off its catch shadows so that those catch shadows will disappear, that sort of shadow framework of the giraffe that we saw a moment ago. Notice the giraffe goes ahead and disappears inside the reflection, but we still have its shadow. So this thing that we can't really see inside of the scene is still very much present and casting a shadow. Now, you may look at all that and think, what in the world would you ever use those features for? Well, in a couple of exercises, I'm going to show you a great use for one of those features. But first, I need to show you how to integrate that moonlit sky into this 3D scene so it reflects here inside the other windows. And that's exactly what we'll do in the next exercise.